Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog Series. It is Sunday, October 26, 2025, and on Sundays we talk about the purpose and meaning of life. And I apologize for the delay in getting this out there. I actually had somebody contact me and said, "Hey, where's the vlog?" Usually it's supposed to be up by 6 a.m. in the morning, so I'm a little bit delinquent today. But have you ever had that moment, that experience when everything changes, if you will? In psychology, there's the so-called aha moment, right? Describes that sudden burst of insight or discovery. This That's kind of the short version of what I'm talking about. Okay, it's the immediacy of a new discovery or that sudden, shining in the light of understanding. You've learned something new. You've experienced something different that's maybe quite breathtaking or even profound. And that can happen on an almost daily basis, if you will. All right. So I actually look for the aha moments each day. Quite enjoy that. It's the new insight, the new discovery or experience that elicits some kind of deep intellectual or emotional satisfaction. It's that extra treat that we get to enjoy, even though we know that it's not that big of a deal, but it's special, at least for us, or at least in that moment. And I think of it kind of more along the symbolic lines of enjoying your regular daily meals, but then suddenly being surprised, right, with a delicious or perhaps unexpected dessert, like a rich slice of creamy cheesecake. Actually, it's kind of what happened to me with one time a few years back with eggplant of all things, which I always hated. I always hated eggplant growing up. But then we had this lovely dinner at a Tehrannian restaurant in Toronto, and we had what turned out to be an eggplant-based appetizer. It's almost like a dessert, though. It was absolutely delicious. It was so sweet, and I didn't know initially that it was eggplant that was in the appetizer. It was probably a good thing, but then they broke down the ingredients, and I was absolutely stunned. Right? I never knew that eggplant, of all things, could be transformed into something so savory and flavorful, or shirin, we say in Farsi. And so anyway, I'm hopeful that of having at least one or two moments each day like that, right? Where you learn something new or interesting, and maybe see things a little bit differently or a little bit more joyfully as a result. And so again, this kind of happened a couple of months ago when we took my mother-in-law to the beach on a hot August day. And I knew that she loved the water, having grown up on the Caspian Sea in the northern part of Iran. And so we drove about 45 minutes to a place called Grand Bend, which is on the eastern shore of Lake Huron. And we lounged on the beach that day. We enjoyed the sun and the waves and the splashing and the people and all that sort of thing. It was just a great day, a perfect day. And so then when I asked her at the end of the day in Farsi, my broken Farsi, if she enjoyed her day at the lake, she responded thusly. Well, actually, my wife had to give me the English translation, if you will. So here's the direct quote in English with the 10 words that I shall never forget. I hope I don't forget. My eyes fell upon the water and my heart delighted. That was her response. Did you enjoy the day on the Farzan at the beach? My eyes fell upon the water and my heart delighted. So not only did I love the poetry of her words, but I realized just how deeply meaningful the water was for my 97-year-old mother-in-law. And I made a mental note that I needed to take her. I should definitely in the future continue to take her to the water at least as often as possible over the next few years, however long she's with us, because it's one of the most important connections that she makes to her very soul. Now, she didn't tell me that, but her words, when I asked her, conveyed that message. And so now I've made this mental note that this is what's important, right? And I remembered yet again the importance of, trying to nourish people's souls, if you will, our own as well, of course. But certainly, if we can provide kind of a deep spiritual and emotional support for others, then we know that we're doing something profoundly important. The metaphorical equivalence of providing them dinner, feeding them, nourishing them. But then there's another level of the daily aha moments. Okay, and I'd like to ask you if you've ever experienced that pivotal moment in your life that maybe actually or literally changed your entire life. These are much rarer, of course. the life-changing experiences. So where seemingly almost everything changes and you see the world in an almost completely different light or through a different lens. Now, I've talked previously about my own near-death experiences, or NDE, previously, at least in terms of the little description of what happened. But I've never really spoken publicly about how the death indeed was a life-changing experience, right? No, I didn't experience survivor's guilt, although that's a possibility. A friend of ours literally died the same year from exactly the same condition that I had in 2020. We both had it in 2021. That is this massive pulmonary embolism. And I died, but I had the good fortune then of being able to get back upstairs before I died, lying down on the bed, my wife being there, and then she saved my life. And so I came back from the other side twice, and then getting to the hospital and so on. And so I'm on blood thinners for the rest of my life, and I'm fine. But the difference with our friend was that he collapsed on a separate floor, and his wife discovered him, maybe an hour later or what have you. So I won't share any further details. That's not my place, but our positions, certainly in principle, could easily have been exactly reversed, right? He could have survived, and then I wouldn't be here. But again, that's not what happened. So, simply put, then, was death a life-changing experience? Oh, I've sort of downplayed it a lot publicly. I've spoken about it, and I've tried to speak about it almost in a humorous way, but it definitely was a big life-changing experience. It was, I was always kind of aware of what's happening in the world, even woke, if you will. But I became far more awake in a much more profound sense than I ever imagined. Some people are not going to like this, especially if they're mired, for example, in U.S. politics, or look at the world, for example, through a right-wing ideological perspective, or for that matter, in many instances, if you look at the world, from a more left-wing perspective, you might not like what I have to say. So let me preface what I'm going to say then by asking you to set aside your politics to truly understand what I have to offer. In fact, if you're looking at the world and if you're interpreting my comments through a political or even a religious lens, then you're definitely going to miss the point. And it's not that you're right or wrong to be, right wing or left wing or religious or whatever you might be. Okay, that's all part of the human condition, and it's part of your own life experience, and no one's to take that away from you. And in fact, it's my awakening, if you will, that affords me the opportunity, the ability not to judge people on their politics or their ideologies per se. They are who they are, you are who you are, we are who we are. Okay? It's just that I'm in a different place now. And I don't want this to sound superior. I'll explain. It's almost like I live in a different world. And I can't ever go back to being asleep or living in the dream world. Now, that's not entirely true. Okay? So I still feel the pull, the anxiety of the dream world in which most people live, and I feel that occasionally as well, a small percentage of the time. I even recently felt the urge to cry 1 or 2 weeks ago, lamenting what I was seeing all around me, some of the struggles, recent events, and personal experiences, and so on. So yeah, again, I live in this world too, but then I remembered that that's just the dream of the everyday world of life and living. And that may sound a bit contradictory or almost absurd, right? How can it be that the everyday world in which we live as sentient, cognitive human beings, who enjoy desserts and days at the beaches and so on, how is that the dream world? That's the real world, Dr. J, right? Where we eat and enjoy the sun and sleep and laugh and pray and so much more. And sure, I agree that that's an amazing world of experience in which we all live, right? And experiences, these clearly matter. But just not as much as we might like to think, or better said, it matters in a different way than what I'm talking about. It matters in the sense that we all live for a portion of eternity in these bodies that we're given for however many years that we might be promised, and we don't know how many of those that might be. But typically never more than 100, at most, right? Yeah, a few people live a little bit longer, even to past 110. That's extraordinarily rare. Bottom line is that basically after a century, um, this experience of corporeal being ends for all of us. And so the awakening that I experienced after my death, or really my two NDEs, was a truly pivotal and life changing moment. And so I certainly still see the world in all of its beauty and all of its glory, and filled with daily, life events and happenings, and on a planet that's quite remarkable. And of course, I also see people suffering, people in pain, people struggling to survive, along with all other life, quite frankly, that's just taking a different form from from that of us human beings. And I see the comedy and the tragedy and the joy and the sadness and so on. But here's the difference. Okay, so again, I'm just like everyone else. Don't misunderstand me here. But I no longer process information in exactly the same way that I used to. So again, let me be clear. I still, often do. Like, I consume music, and I do my teaching, and I consume the news and the media, just like everyone else. And I watch the Blue Jays, and I hope that they're going to win the World Series. That might not happen, but the point is that none of that, of course, really matters. I mean, it certainly matters in the sense, in the immediacy of our everyday affairs, right? And so we can all enjoy good things, like a good meal and a day at the beach. Um, and that matters, too. I mean, it matters if we, when we go to work. It matters the jobs that we do. It matters that we have to fill up the car with gas or whatever. All of that matters. It's just that it doesn't really matter in the grander scheme of things. And I think we all know this, but the thing is that we prefer just to kind of go back to sleep and continue, acting and living as though this dream world is what matters above all else. And our lives certainly do matter, right? In a physical sense. Our houses matter, our jobs matter, our money matters, whether our favorite team wins matters. And if we're putting on weight or staying in shape, that all matters, obviously. And we all need to think that, that there's a certain seriousness and purpose in our lives, right? And that our striving and our work, our ethics and our urgency of what we see all around us, that we all like to think that all of this is leading to some place of greater importance or significance. But at the same time, we look around us and and believe that we come to recognize then that all of these other folks are also participating in this play with us. And we then start to get kind of judgmental, right? We all think that people should be playing their parts just as we're playing our part. And that's where our politics and our ideologies and so much more come into play. And we judge people accordingly. Hey, you're not playing your role properly, right? Don't you know that our play demands certain things of each of us and each of the different characters? And you're not playing your character properly. So what does that mean? Maybe you're not doing the job that everyone expects you to be doing. Maybe you're not espousing the right ideology, politically or otherwise. Maybe you're not chasing the paycheck hard enough, or for that matter, caring for others with sufficient energy and purpose. All of that may or may not be true, and we can argue, and often do, with one another accordingly. Hey, Dr. J, you're not waving the flag properly or with enough urgency, or you're not giving enough of your paycheck to charity. You're not making enough money to get rich, or you're not helping the poor. Pick your line, pick your critique. And I can assure you that every single person, every one of us, can play our roles differently. And we can all be critiqued by those, or at least some people, who don't like our acting, who don't like the roles that we're playing. And that's the problem with plays and living in the dream world, in my opinion. So what happens then when you wake up? When you realize that it's a play and that we're busily, fretting about our acting or originating our roles properly? And maybe we don't like the sound of our voice, or maybe we don't like our physical appearance, or someone else doesn't, or we don't like the lines that we've been asked to read. What then? Well, we have to we have to, as they say, break our character mold. We have to we have to step outside of the play. We have to wake up and then speak directly to the audience. And of course, that's what usually makes people a bit uncomfortable. The audience usually doesn't want that, right? They want us and themselves to continue to act and be part of this grand play as participants, as actors, as well as observers. But once you realize that, as Jacques stated in Bill Shakespeare's play, As You Like It, I call him Bill or Billy or Mac or Buddy. But anyway, once you realize, as Jacques stated, that all the world's a stage, well, then you have to make the most important decision of your life. Are you going to continue sleepwalking in the dream world of life's grand play, or will you decide to wake up from that dream and see beyond the illusions? So in next week's vlog, I'm going to discuss what that waking up looks like, at least from my perspective. I just had to set the stage with the vlog this week, pun intended. So stay tuned. So much more about what this life-changing experience and worldview ends up looking like next week. So in the meantime, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. Peace.